The People's Republic of China has committed a despicable campaign of genocide against the Uyghur people and has exported its oppression to target ethnic and religious minority groups and their family members globally. Since 1997, members of the Uyghur diaspora have experienced the long reach of the PRC's authoritarianism in the form of unprovoked harassment, intimidation, and coercion. Communities in our own nation are victims of China's repression. Mr. Abramowitz, how do China's tactics differ and remain unpublicized compared to other countries when it is the key enabler of transnational repression?
Senator, China is the world leader on transnational repression. That's been very clear from our reports, from the work that my colleagues have done. They conduct the most sophisticated, global, and comprehensive campaign of transnational repression in the world. I would say that China's efforts
Is your mic on?
by three particular noteworthy trends. Number one, thank you. Number one, the campaign targets many groups, ethnic and religious minorities, political dissidents, human rights activists, journalists, and former insiders. It's the full range of tactics that they use, from direct attacks like kidnapping dissidents, co-opting other countries to detain their dissidents, and also, in the case of the Uyghurs that you outlined, really threatening their families to get their family members who are living in the free world to basically shut up. Finally, the sheer breadth and global scale of the campaign is incredible, and outspoken members of the Hong Kong diaspora have found themselves in the dragnet, as have many others. So it's really the number one country, the number one perpetrator.
How can the United States help support governments to combat China's repression of minority groups abroad? And, for example, can Magnitsky sanctions be utilized to hold the perpetrators, enabling China's transnational repression accountable?
We've certainly been in favor of the greater use of the Magnitsky sanctions to target individuals. We think that there can be changes to the law to make perpetrators of transnational repression more squarely within the focus of the sanction regime. I would also say, I think it's very difficult to influence China directly, but one of the themes that we've looked at Freedom House over the last 5 years is China's efforts to co-opt international fora like the Human Rights Council in Geneva. It's really important for the United States to really combat China's efforts in fora like that.
Russia imprisons dissenters like Vladimir Kara-Murza and Alexander Navalny that threaten Putin's power, and it shuts down independent media to control the behavior and flow of information to its citizens. But sadly, Russia's repression doesn't stop within its borders. In 2022, Russia journalist Evgenia Balatarova fled to Kazakhstan after Russian police searched her house due to her online presence in opposition to Russia's illegal war against Ukraine. Kazakh authorities then detained her when they learned of the criminal charges against her and told her she wasn't allowed to leave Kazakhstan. Mr. Groves, have there been widespread transnational repression activities targeting Russian journalists and media services who move abroad after Russia invaded Ukraine?
Yes, I gave example with at least three cases where Russian journalists have been targeted or activists have been targeted abroad with assassination attempts, which may have intended to just be inconclusive assassination attempts, just to send a shiver down the spine of other journalists. Women were selected, in my view, specifically because of the terror from a Russian perspective of the fact that they're not stopping at gender or boundary. And we've seen more attempts than the three, but the three are conclusively linked to chemical weapons that we believe are only in the hands of Russia. So we've seen attempts by Russian authorities to force countries that are nominally democratic to extradite Russians that are in those countries. Kazakhstan is one example, but Bulgaria is another example. Austria is another example. So there are many attempts for judicial repression, in addition to the extrajudicial that we mentioned earlier. I think we're talking about cases that are definitely close to 100, not just one or two.
100.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one last question. In November, the Nicaraguan regime applauded the unprecedented win of its first Miss Universe winner and called her win a moment of, quote, legitimate joy and pride. Shortly after, the director of the Miss Nicaragua pageant, Karen Celebretti, was prohibited from returning to Nicaragua, and her husband and son in Nicaragua were detained on accusations of conspiracy dating back to 2018. Clearly, the Ortega regime intends to use such tactics to silence all dissenters, both within Nicaragua and abroad. Mr. Groves, how should the United States respond to the Ortega regime's intimidation of Karen Celebretti and her family?
As we discussed earlier, we believe that sanction tools such as the Magnitsky Act should not be exclusively used to countries like Russia. They can definitely be applied to the context of Nicaragua as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Ricketts.